I woke up this morning to a silence that felt unnatural, almost accusatory. The house, usually filled with the hum of life, clinking dishes, the faint buzz of the fridge, even her soft laughter, was empty in a way that pressed against my chest. I could smell the coffee brewing in the kitchen, but it barely registered, swallowed by the weight in my mind. I kept replaying the last few months over and over. The quiet tension at the dinner table, her subtle avoidance of eye contact, the way conversations had become thin and mechanical. I tried to tell myself I was prepared, that I could handle this day like a professional, but as I glanced at the clock, my hands trembled slightly while I adjusted my tie. The suit I put on felt heavier than usual, like it absorbed all the anxiety I'd been carrying, and then some. I caught my reflection in the mirror for a moment, studying the man staring back at me, the lines around my eyes, the tight set of my jaw, the quiet panic I didn't want anyone else to see. I took a breath, or at least I tried, letting the steam from the coffee curl in front of me like a fragile barrier between reality and the storm waiting outside. Today would change everything. I just didn't know if I was ready. The courthouse loomed ahead, gray and imposing, its stone walls cold and indifferent, like it had seen every kind of human heartbreak and barely blinked. I walked up the steps slowly, each one echoing under my shoes, and I could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on me even before I stepped inside. People passed by, chatting about trivial things, their laughter and casual steps completely oblivious to the storm inside me. I wanted to scream that this wasn't trivial, that my life was unraveling right here in these halls, but I stayed silent. My mind kept replaying the thought that had haunted me for months. Is she really going to do this? Laugh while signing those papers? And then, almost cruelly, I remembered the laughter from better days, the warmth and light that used to fill our mornings, and it felt like mockery now. I gripped my briefcase tighter, the leather stiff under my fingers, as if holding onto it could somehow anchor me to reality. The heavy doors creaked as I pushed them open, and the smell of polish, old wood, and faint mildew hit me, sterile, unwelcoming. I stepped into the courtroom with a calm I didn't feel, heart pounding in a rhythm that screamed how unprepared I truly was for what waited inside. Every small sound, the shuffle of papers, the tap of shoes on tile, made my stomach twist tighter. I wanted to turn back, run somewhere safe, but there was nowhere to hide. Today wasn't about running. It was about facing everything I had tried so hard to control, and then I saw her. Across the room, sitting in a chair that suddenly felt miles away, she looked untouchable, almost smug, like she was already in on a private joke I wasn't invited to. And he was there too, leaning slightly closer, exchanging a glance that froze something deep inside me. My chest tightened, my stomach dropped, and for a second, I couldn't move, or maybe I didn't want to. I tried to remember the mornings when her hair caught the sunlight just right, the lazy Sunday breakfasts where we laughed over burnt toast, thinking everything was perfect. Flashbacks hit me like shards of glass. Her smiling at me across the kitchen table, me feeling invincible in her love. And now, it was replaced with this. Her laughter, that careless sparkle in her eyes, directed at someone else. The sound barely reached me at first, muffled, as if my mind refused to accept it. I felt the urge to run, to vanish, but my feet were rooted, my eyes locked on them. Visuals, shallow focus on her laughing, blurred background of the courtroom, the subtle shift of his hand brushing hers. My thoughts raced. How could she? How could we get here without me noticing? I swallowed hard, trying to hold my composure, but betrayal had a taste in my mouth. Bitter, sharp, unforgettable. The room felt smaller now, almost suffocating, filled with the faint scent of polished wood and old carpet. The judge's pen scratched across the paper, but my attention was elsewhere, on her. She picked up the pen, her hand steady, and I noticed how casual her movements were, like this was all normal, like she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. And then it happened, her laughter. Light, careless, slipping out as if it belonged to a different world, a world where I didn't exist. He leaned in slightly, whispering something I couldn't hear, and she smiled, a knowing smile that cut deeper than any words could. I gripped the armrest of my chair until my knuckles turned white, trying to ground myself, but it was impossible. Flashback hit me again. Our last night together, her soft voice in the dark, the promises we made that I thought were forever. And here I was, watching it dissolve in front of me, a scene I couldn't rewind. Visuals, tight shot of the pen gliding over paper, her fingers brushing the edge of his hand, my trembling hand in the foreground. I could feel the cold metal of the chair pressing into my palms, the distant hum of the air conditioner, and the quiet echo of my own heartbeat in my ears. The realization hit me fully. All those years, the trust, the love, I had placed them in the hands of someone who could laugh at them now. I wanted to look away, to disappear, but something inside me forced my gaze to stay, witnessing the raw, undeniable truth. The judge cleared his throat, and suddenly the room felt even heavier, the air thick with anticipation. My heart hammered against my ribs as I rose to stand, each step toward the bench echoing in my ears. He began listing the details: debts, assets, the division of property, and then came the pause that would change everything. When he spoke the numbers, my net worth, the silence that followed was almost tangible. I saw her smile falter, a flicker of surprise crossing her face, and his posture stiffen, protective but powerless. Flashbacks ran through me like a movie. Late nights hunched over spreadsheets, coffee cups stacked high, my fingers raw from endless typing, the sacrifices I had made while building everything from scratch. And now, in this sterile courtroom, all of that work stood as undeniable proof, not just of money, but of the life I had fought to create. Visuals, close-up of my eyes widening, her expression frozen, the judge's gavel hovering over the scene, subtle pan across the courtroom capturing every reaction. For a moment, a surge of quiet vindication swept over me, replacing the despair that had weighed so heavily on my chest. I realized, with a mix of disbelief and satisfaction, that the power had shifted, silently but irrevocably, in my favor. Her laughter vanished instantly, like someone had flipped a switch. I watched her eyes widen, the confident, almost smug expression replaced with something raw: shock, disbelief, maybe even a flicker of regret. He shifted beside her, trying to maintain composure, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the sudden rigidity that betrayed his surprise. For a moment, time slowed. I could hear the faint scrape of a chair leg, the whisper of paper, the collective intake of breath around the courtroom. My mind raced but felt oddly calm. This is more than just numbers. This is everything I've built, everything they thought they could take, laid bare. Flashbacks punctuated the moment. The early mornings when I worked while the house still slept, the missed birthdays, the sacrifices that seemed invisible to everyone except me. Visuals, slow zoom on her face, capturing that fleeting vulnerability. His stiff posture, my steady stance in contrast, unshaken. A quiet, almost imperceptible thrill ran through me. Not cruelty, not gloating, but the satisfaction of truth revealed. And in that instant, I realized something powerful. The balance had shifted. Not through anger or revenge, but simply through the life I had forged with my own hands. That I stepped out of the courthouse, and the sunlight hit me like a cold, sharp reminder that the world hadn't stopped for any of this. The city buzzed around me. Car horns, footsteps, distant chatter, but it all felt muted, filtered through the haze of my thoughts. Each step down the courthouse steps was both heavy and liberating, like I was shedding a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. Flashbacks collided with the present. Arguments that escalated over nothing, whispered apologies that came too late, the nights I lay awake wondering if I had failed somehow. Visuals, long shot of me walking alone. Down the stone steps, cityscape blurred in the background, hands buried in pockets, shoulders squared but tense. I could feel the warmth of the sun on my face, a subtle comfort against the lingering sting in my chest. My mind oscillated between relief and emptiness, triumph and heartbreak. For the first time in months, I understood that freedom could taste bittersweet. That victory didn't erase the scars of betrayal, but it did mark the beginning of reclaiming myself. And as I walked, I realized that this journey wasn't over. It was just starting, and for the first time, it was mine to define. When I finally returned home, the silence hit me harder than I expected. The familiar creak of the front door, the faint smell of coffee lingering from the morning, even the sunlight slanting through the curtains, it all felt wrong, like I had stepped into a museum of my own memories. I wandered through rooms that had once been alive with laughter and arguments, running my fingers over surfaces that still held traces of her presence. The coffee mugs we used to fight over sat abandoned in the sink, a faint trace of her scent clinging to them. Flashbacks washed over me. Late-night conversations that went on for hours, our first shared apartment, the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder when she was tired. Visuals, slow pans of the living room, a framed photo of happier times, the empty bedroom that felt colder than ever. My inner voice whispered truths I hadn't wanted to face. I built this life, but now I have to rebuild it alone. The emptiness was suffocating, but somewhere underneath it, a fragile thread of resolve began to grow. The house was a tomb of the past, but it was also the foundation for whatever came next. The days that followed were quieter, but not in the hollow, suffocating way of the house right after the divorce. They were quieter in a way that forced me to confront myself, my choices, my efforts, my resilience. I spent mornings revisiting the early days of my work, the long nights where exhaustion was a constant companion, and the tiny victories that no one noticed but me. Flashbacks played like a subtle film in my mind. The first time I closed a big deal, the nights I pushed through fatigue while everyone else slept, the small celebrations I allowed myself in silence. Visuals, journaling at a desk, typing on a laptop in an empty apartment, running through quiet city streets as dawn breaks. I began to see the patterns, the strength I had developed, and slowly, the pain from betrayal softened, not vanished, but softened enough to allow clarity. I realized that the foundation of my life wasn't her or anyone else. It was me, built from years of dedication, perseverance, and quiet determination. And as I embraced that truth, I felt a subtle shift, a quiet power growing from inside. Healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about reclaiming who I was, piece by piece, day by day. Eventually, I reached a point where the past felt like a shadow I could acknowledge without letting it control me. The sting of her laughter, the betrayal, the courtroom tension, it was all there, but muted, distant, like a storm finally passed. I started making plans again, small ones at first, a new routine, revisiting hobbies I had abandoned, reconnecting with friends who reminded me that life didn't have to revolve around heartbreak. Flashbacks flickered occasionally, not with pain, but with lessons. The nights I had stayed up building my dreams, the mornings I had pushed myself to grow, the moments I had thought I was losing, only to realize I was learning. Visuals, sunrise over the city, hands planting seeds in a garden, walking forward along a quiet street with purpose. I understood that moving forward wasn't about revenge or proving anything to anyone else. It was about reclaiming my life, on my own terms. And as I stepped into this new chapter, I felt a quiet, unshakable strength. For the first time in a long time, I was free. Not just free from her or the past, but free in a way that allowed hope, resilience, and possibility to take root. The chapter was closed, but my story? That was just beginning.